I'm okay. Crazy. How are you? I think you were sick, no?
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit better now. I
Oh,
think I work, so I'm freelance. I actually work in a larger office full time, and it's a bit of a disease nest at the minute. It's that time of year, isn't it?
oh yeah, it is. It's
um,
everywhere right now.
but I'm feeling better, thanks. Yeah,
Oh, good.
yeah, and I was really enjoyed speaking to you last week for the Guardian, which was more of a fun interview. I think not that this
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
not that this one won't be, but hopefully
Yeah, no,
can
I'm
get
sure it will.
more into the book as well. Because wow, yeah, it's an amazing read. Um, I was lucky enough to get a copy a couple of months ago. Um, I probably should have read it again closer because not all of it is stuck. But yeah, um, difficult to know where to start with it really. But I'll try and unpack as much as I can.
Sure.
Um,
No problem.
I mean, just from the actual blurb on the back of the book, there's a lot to unpack there in terms of your feelings towards why you did it and what you got out of it. You said something about finishing the book was almost like allowing you, releasing you to go back to what you do best in music. And was it that gives me the impression that it was quite cathartic, like it's something needed to happen.
Yes, it was quite cathartic from a variety of perspectives. I was fortunate enough to find two fellow travelers that had the same musical ambitions and also became incredibly close as friends. And I existed in that kind of ideal world for, over 45 years.
Mm.
And that's rare, but it's so all consuming in another sense that when the band, when Neil retired in 2015, that was one sort of shock to my system that I had to grapple with. And then, of course, his illness, which, you know, lasted 3.5 years,
Mm.
and his ultimate passing left me feeling, let's put it like this, left me with a lot of grief work to do. And it kind of robbed me of any musical aspirations.
Mm.
Uh, and so when I combine that with the fact that I was watching my mother slowly descend into dementia, which she had in her final year, um, both those things put me in an incredibly reflective state of mind. And so, um, as part of my finding my way out of that,
Mm.
this project suddenly seemed to make sense to me, and examining other losses I'd had in my life, such as, the ones that my family endured in the war, and of course, the loss of my father at 12 years old, which perhaps I didn't fully deal with at the time. Um, all those investigations I was now undertaking to write this book helped me comb through things about myself and things about my life that perhaps I'd compartmentalized. And
Mm.
when I was finished that rather long journey, I I felt better prepared to go out back into the world and to embrace, what there is to embrace about the blessing of living a life I've led and the opportunities I have had and what I have in front of me. So perhaps that's a long-winded answer to your question, but um, yeah, I think it did help me. It was cathartic, and I feel in a much better frame of mind to kind of do anything now.
No, and it's great that I mean that people can still do that. In with age as well. Obviously, you're 70 now, and I think it's testament to probably you as an individual that because a lot of people I think they get to a certain age and they think I've learned everything I need to learn, but I suppose it's a really profound thing that you're still seeking self improvement.
Well, I think you have to because I wasn't happy, and I don't want to live the rest of my life unhappy. So if you're not feeling the way you think you should feel or the way you're used to feeling, then you have to do something about it. And I sought therapy, and therapy was very helpful for me. But this was a very important part of that therapy, my own personal therapy. So, everybody has a different way of dealing with unhappiness. Some people, like my best friend Alex Lifeson, is a wonderful dude, and we both went through the same things, but he was able to put perspective on it and bounce back much more quickly than I was. And so I required a bit more soul searching, I suppose. But maybe he just knows himself better than I know myself.
Yeah. Would you say that's? I mean, what were the? I mean, from the beginning of writing the memoir to the end of it, what? And obviously, you've had some. There's been a period of several months since it's been prepared to be launched. What are the biggest things that you've learned about yourself, or the work that you said that you've done on yourself? What has been? It might be difficult to narrow it down to one thing, but what are the biggest things you've learned about yourself that maybe you didn't know 5 years ago?
Well, that's really a good question because, I've gone through my life with this impression of myself as a child, where I was this quiet kid, this nerdy wallflower type kid who grew his hair long and hid behind those locks and didn't say much at parties and didn't really take control of my life. But as I look back and re-examine my childhood, I was not that. When I see these video clips of me as an 8-year-old, that my dad had been filming these home movies, and any time there was a shot, there was my stupid head photobombing his movie, making funny faces, trying to be the center of attention. That's not the behavior of a quiet, shy kid.
An introvert.
Also, when I trace myself, after his death, when I came out of this year of mourning, which is tradition in a Jewish household, I grabbed onto music with a fever. I was bound and determined to catch up on everything I'd missed for that year. So much so that, when I had an opportunity to buy an acoustic guitar from my next door neighbor, I begged my mother for the $10 and she gave it to me and I bought it. And I just sat in my room learning all these songs by bands I liked and pop songs. And every time I had a couple of bucks saved up, I would go and buy records. And so I was clearly motivated to do this, to have this kind of life. And even in 1969, when the guys in my band asked, basically kicked me out for a short time. Well, how did I react? Did I react like a wallflower? Did I go home and weep? No, I went home and yeah, I was hurt. But I called up all my other friends that were musicians and I started another band and off I went. And I was more successful than the band I had left. So that was really informative, that my vision, and I really wondered why I always had this vision of myself as this shy, quiet kid. Now, I was quiet and I was shy, but I wasn't that shy. And obviously I had enough what we call chutzpah to keep on keeping on. So that was kind of shocking, and it made me feel good, actually, about myself. And it also made me realize that when one has a vision of oneself, and in fact, this is true of all memory. Writing a memoir is an investigation into memory.
Yeah.
And what I realize is that our emotions are connected with our memories, and those emotions color your memories. And so they're not ever to be considered purely objective. And I'm sure there are things in my book that someone else present in the moment that I'm describing would describe that moment differently, because we're each affected and color our memories through what emotions we had about that moment.
The part about your childhood was very hard hitting, and especially losing your dad and the impact that had on your home life. And it was difficult to read about the relationship that you had with your aunts and uncles, and maybe, well, I say maybe, you didn't really have the support that you needed and that you deserved. Um, and do you think, with them maybe feeling that you were rebelling by, growing your hair long and playing music and not doing what typical Jewish boy would do as a teenager? And do you think, if that was rebelling, do you think you took some of that maybe into your musical career, and certainly with Russian? I suppose, I hope I'm not making connections that aren't there, but just your outlook on music and just not compromising.
Well, yeah, it's a good point. I had never made that connection, but it's possible. I'm sure that my aunts and uncles were just doing what they thought was right, being tough with me at a time where I lost my father and I was behaving in a way that they believed to be rebellious and disrespectful of my mother's grief. You know,
Mm.
uh, it was all about the grief that my mother was experiencing and the difficulty of her life. And of course, it was impossible and it was unresolvable. Her grief would last the rest of her life. But um, such was the love she had for my father. But at the same time, I was a child. I was coping with a loss myself. And so there was zero consideration for how I was. Not a
Mm.
single adult ever asked me how I was, but they were very quick to condemn me for my behavior or my long hair or whatever.
Yeah.
So, okay, there's two sides to every coin. But it did make me more determined. And yes, I was rebellious. And that rebellion took me out of this grieving household and put me out in the world to meet other friends that were not of the same religions, friends that were interested in music. So the new religion was music for me. And so I think it's very likely that a lot of my determination came out in the unwillingness to compromise in those early days. So I think it's an interesting observation you make.
Of course, yeah, and I think one of the things that readers are really going to enjoy when they open the book is the quote or the lyric that you printed from Neil there, the lyric from Dreamline. We're only immortal for a limited time. And one of the things I was thinking is that he was the primary lyricist for all those years and thousands upon thousands of lyrics for all those songs. Um, was it was it always going to be that lyric that you put in there? Was it always going to be something from Neil as a bit of a nod of the cap? And I suppose the second part of that question is what does that lyric mean to you?
Well, it's a good question because I hadn't given any thought to an epigraph for the book. And then when it was suggested to me that I might want to think of one, I had too many. I kept thinking of all these things I wanted to say about myself, and which was ridiculous because I had a whole book to say those things. Uh, but that line from that song always hit me very hard. It was very relatable to me because I grew up around stories of loss, and then I experienced my own story of loss with my dad. and it made me someone that wanted to grab life with both hands. And so I really could relate to that line, and it took me a second to focus in on that piece of lyric that meant so much to me as a player and as a singer, but also it spoke to the way I looked at my life, if you know what I mean. It's one of the reasons I love Dreamline so much.
Yeah, and one of the many things that struck me in our last chat, you were talking about. I think you were very honest with your answer about regrets, with regards to your career, and you ask a lot of people about this, and they say, "Oh no, I've no regrets. Everything was exactly how it should have been." And some people really may believe that, but I think it was very honest of you to just say, "No, I do have regrets," and then go the next part and say very personal regrets about your family. I'm not missing out on time with like your wife, your son at the time that you referred to. So since the band ended, going on 10 years ago, how have you consciously tried to reshape that to maybe claw back time?
Oh yeah, I started to do that many years ago.
Right.
There was a time where, especially around when my daughter was born in the mid '90s, where I really wanted another child, and Nancy said, "There's no way I'm going to do that and have you do what happened before, where you just, impregnate me and then run off to be with your bandmates." So
It's a raw deal, yeah.
yeah. So I mean, as I talk about in the book, getting pregnant was not so easy at that stage in life, and so it took a long time, and it took us by surprise when my daughter finally did come along. And so I was true to my word as much as I could be, and I took a lot of time off the band, and I made a point of being there for my little daughter. But the benefit of that was that I was suddenly more available to my son, who was now a teenager and probably needed me as much, if not more, perhaps, because that's a turbulent time in a young man's life. So, yeah, I would say from the mid '90s on, all three of us in our band were more determined to be more present in the lives of our families. And of course, today it holds true, although I can't stop my nature, which is that of a traveler. I have a incredible curiosity for places. And my wife shares that with me, and it's one of the secrets of our longevity as a married couple, is we both have this need to get out there and see someplace new and travel across it and walk across it, bike across it. And so I don't think my children are all that pleased with the fact that we still travel so much.
Yeah.
But I like to think that they know how much we love them, and that when we're home, we're with them when we can be. And so I think it's all worked itself out.
One of the other parts of the book, I think this particular incident has been public knowledge for a while. I wasn't aware of it. But the NME interview you did, I think it was the late 70s, did some research on that. Apparently it's quite an infamous thing in Rush folklore, and definitely uncomfortable to read some of the connections that writer was making with like concentration camps. Really can understand why that was just horrendous for you as well. And to change tack a little bit, how has your relationship with the press changed over the years? Not just in the UK, but worldwide.
I think it's changed quite a lot. First of all, we changed as a band quite a few times, and we embraced various styles of music, which is good and bad, of course, because some people like the change and other people are alienated by the change. So, but I think the longevity of our band and all the things we were able to accomplish, if that, I mean, those things can't influence a writer to like your band, but they can at least show that we were due a little respect for the accomplishments. I don't expect any writer to love what I do. I don't expect my friends to love what I do. It's their choice completely. But it's been a long, a wonderful career, and I think we've worked hard enough to earn a bit of, you know, just a bit of respect for that, if nothing else. And so and also there's the flip side where all these young fans that liked us in the 70s and 80s, a lot of them are writing for magazines now and producing TV shows, and so there's a bit of that, fanboy thing that happens. One of the reasons we did the Colbert Report when we started making ourselves open to television was the director Jimmy was a fanboy, and he was driving Stephen crazy to have us on the show. So those kind of things happen more often, and that's really nice and gratifying, and that does help change the relationship with the press.
I wanted to ask about your connection with the UK as well, and all the walking holidays and things you've done. And I know that Neil lived in London for a time with his late wife. And what is it about the country that draws you to it? Obviously there's rich musical history, but there is in most places. But what? And you keep coming back to London as well. So
yeah, well, I love London. I think it's the greatest city on earth, frankly. My wife and I spend a lot of time there because it has everything we love to do. The museums are fascinating. The theater is endless. We love live theater. So many music shows. I have some good friends there through the years that are both musicians and not musicians. And it's so easy access to the rest of the UK. We can hop on a train, and if you're lucky and not striking, you can get out to Cornwall. And
if you're very lucky,
you can get a seat on the GWR. But so there's so much to see, and it's a remarkable country because so many people live in Great Britain, yet it's still, so much of it is still untouched and protected, absolutely like traveling back in time. And so, we've discovered that it's just a place that's close to our heart. We just love to spend time there, and we love the old and the new of England. And it's also a great jumping off point for the rest of Europe. It's an hour or 2 hours most from anywhere in Europe. So just a wonderful place to use as a hub, and we get so much really pleasure out of the culture.
As a friendly recommendation, I live in Leeds, so fairly northern, and I know you're coming to Sheffield on your tour, and I would, if you like your outdoor space, I would really recommend the Peak District.
Nice.
In the Sheffield region.
Okay, great.
Some really sort of, like you say, like protected kind of preserved places. The Lake District as well, but yeah, one to get into another time.
No, we did a hike through the Lake District, and I have some great stories about my wife and I getting lost in the Lake District. On those. What are they? What is the word for hills or mountains you use there?
It's not valleys, is it?
Valleys? No. Anyway, I'm having a senior moment, but it will come to me. But so yes, I appreciate any tips. So maybe you could send the names of these places along to Meg, and she can pass them on, because we do love to explore.
So I keep saying things about the book, but so many things to pick out of that. You spoke about the disappointment of the band coming to perhaps an abrupt end in 2015, but you also made a point that perhaps everything post 2002 was kind of a bonus, like maybe like an epilogue to your career, that maybe maybe in another lifetime you wouldn't have had. Maybe Neil hadn't come back to the band, but how long did it take you to come to that, you know, place of peace where even though it didn't end the perfect way, you still had more time, you know, after everything that happened to
Yeah.
Neil?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. When
'Cause I'm guessing it wasn't overnight. It took some time
No,
to.
it wasn't overnight, but you know, the few years that Neil was grieving the loss of his first family was a moment for us to take stock, I
Mm,
guess, and to Alex and I to accept that this was probably the end of the band, and it probably explains why I was so ferociously thrown into my solo project at
mm,
that time. And you know, his suffering was so at the forefront of our thinking that we didn't even talk to each other about the future.
mm,
Maybe it's because somewhere deep inside we held out hope that he would need to play again, uh, and that we'd get that phone call, which indeed did come. So then we were back on the road, and it's a whole new atmosphere. You know, it's a celebration of, um, you know, of being able to reunite, and those tours we did post 2002 were just incredible.
mm,
They were all jubilant in spirit, you know, and every tour we took such care and spent so much time on the details.
mm.
And so it really felt like the best job ever. And so, of course, when Neil, after the difficult conversation we had in 2014 about the R30, and he first let us know that he was thinking of retirement, I took it very hard. I really was quite. I really had to stifle my anger
Mm.
about that because I loved what I did so much. I loved my role in the band, but I had one partner that had a new family and didn't want to blow that, and another partner that was struggling with his health. So I just had to accept it, of course, because I had to realize that this is life, and you
Mm.
know nothing lasts forever. But I still, you know, stubbornly held out hope that it'll be fine. Everyone will change their minds. Alex will
Yeah.
suddenly feel better. Neil will suddenly decide he wants to stay on the road. But of course, none of that came to pass. And the thing that made it finally stop being a subject for resentment from me was the email I got from Neil telling me he was ill.
Mm.
And within a moment, by the end of that dinner, where we were in shock, my wife and I, uh, all of that disappeared. And it was just concern now,
Yeah.
because now there was a serious problem that superseded any of my petty resentments, and all of that disappeared. And, you know, our thoughts turned elsewhere.
You know, I remember about 10, well, probably longer actually, about 11, 12 years ago when the documentary Beyond the Lighted Stage came out with the guys that did, was it Metal Evolution?
Yeah, yeah,
That was the
yeah, yeah.
one. And, you know,
Banger films, yeah.
yeah, they did the movie of Iron Maiden as well, and they did some great stuff. And it's amazing, you know, that just the whole history of Rush and everything you did, all the albums, all the tours. There's nothing being taken away from any of that. But the thing that people always talk about was one of the final scenes with the three of you just eating dinner, just shooting the shit. And I think it's just, well, it's a beautiful thing. It's just like pure joyous friendship, isn't it? And that supersedes everything else in the band. But I think the question at the end of this is that. Um, when the three of you knew that the band was completely over, did that dynamic of friendship that you had for all them years, did it change at all, like for better or worse, or was it just the same, like nothing had happened?
Well, I would say in the immediate aftermath of Neil's retirement in August of 2015, right into the fall of 2015, um, there was tension in our relationship uh, due to the resentment that I was feeling, and I had nowhere to place those feelings really. And we didn't talk at the very last skate. We didn't really talk about it, and we didn't really say goodbye to each other at the very last skate. When this show was over, it just all was a party.
Yeah.
And Alex and I were in our dressing room, and Neil was in his dressing room with all his friends, because he lived in California, so he was surrounded by his California family, his extended family, and his real family. So there were really two moods at that last gig. And we went up to the party room, and of course we hugged it out with all our crew, and our so many great friends and musicians came to that show. And the next day on the plane home, it was just depressing as hell. The flight home was not a happy flight home.
Yeah.
And you could feel it on my family's face. You could just cut the air with a knife. And it was completely the opposite in Neil's home. He was finished. He had tipped his hat to a career, and he had gotten out of it in one piece still. And now he had a new job to take care of his daughter. And of course, over the next couple of months, we finally started to communicate with each other, and I realized how fucking selfish I was being. Here was a guy who'd lost one family and now had a chance at a second family, and he wasn't going to fuck that up. There's just no way he would allow that to be fucked up.
Yeah.
And so who was I to question that? I had to get my shit together because it was my problem. It was not his problem.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, everything started to improve, and our friendship was healed. And we started writing each other with regularity. And of course, the terrible, tragic irony of it all is then he got sick. So, life is just, it's unpredictable.
Yeah. And, I wanted to ask, after you lost Neil, to then have to go into lockdown, maybe 2-3 months later, how much did that isolation kind of help or hinder the process? Because you just, you've been told, you've been given something awful to deal with, and then you're told that you basically have to sit inside and thinking about it for a year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was difficult. After he passed away, my wife and I ran to New Zealand, which is a place that we love dearly.
Yeah.
And I tried to sort my feelings out there about it all, and it was really hard, even with the distraction of one of the most beautiful places on earth. My wife and I putting one foot in front of the other, climbing these mountains and trying to make sense of it all, but I really couldn't. And then coming home and being locked down, you don't have a choice. You have to deal with these feelings because they're not going to go away. And doing this book was part of that process for me. Definitely was one of the reasons that led me to write. And I have found great comfort in writing, and it's something I really do enjoy. And so somehow or another, putting your feelings on paper can help that process. So,
I wanted to ask about Nancy as well. Obviously, the thing that the thing that I took away from the book is obviously, the chemistry and everything shared by the three of you in the band, and maybe for a time in the late 70s and 80s, I dare say Terry Brown was kind of there may have been like a fourth unofficial member for a time, but I think in terms of your own life, it seems to me like your wife is maybe your main collaborator in a lot of things.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and what obviously you've spoken about walking and a love for nature and the the outdoors. What are the other things that have sustained that longevity? Because it's not a guarantee, is it, when you're away all the time and you've got a life as hectic as you've had?
Yeah, no, my relationship with Nancy was difficult over the course of my touring years. There were times we were incredibly happy, but also times where I was completely absent. And she was developing her own life. And we grew, as I indicate in the book, we grew really far apart,
Mm-hmm.
almost like strangers to each other. I'm sorry, somebody's banging at my door. No one else is home. Can you
Yeah,
just
sure.
hold that thought?
No problem.
All good, Chris?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, I've still got
Good.
a lot of stuff to get through actually, but I might not get time.
Yeah, because I think he has another interview literally right after.
No, it's cool. It's cool.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah, apologies. Um, yeah, so our journey together has been, you know, full of twists as any long-term relationship, and we came dangerously close to it all falling apart. But there was a desire not to let that happen, and that's the only thing that saved us at a very low point. As I said, we were living completely separate lives. We barely exchanged thoughts about things. It was really sad in a way because I think my son suffered during that time, and
Yeah.
he was only a couple of years old, and it went on for a while. But thankfully, we're willing to seek help and to try to, and I think we were smart enough to recognize that we still had enough in common, that we still had kind of similar life goals. But there's no question she sacrificed much more in her life than I did.
Yeah.
She sacrificed a lot to let me live this incredible life. And she still does that, even though I would say we're more equal partners. She still, puts her schedule together after mine, although more and more and more in this period of my life, I try to stop that from happening. I say, if we have plans in February, I just say, I can't work in February. I'm not doing anything. So I try to make her the priority she always should have been in my
Yeah.
life. Better late than never.
Of course. Yeah. I've got time for a couple more questions, but because you didn't really have the end to the band that maybe you foresaw, and having to keep the news about Neil quiet for that time. I feel like did you feel like this memoir was kind of a way of wrapping things up for like the fans of the band as well, like maybe to give them closure, because I think a lot probably still don't fully know what happened to the band, and again, I don't know I don't know if people deserve that or not, but I don't know if that's something that you thought, but I think a lot of fans will take solace from the book, especially the last time you saw Neil seemed like a very powerful memory as well. He was talking about the band, all the albums. When you were writing the book, did you feel like you had like maybe like a little bit of service to fans, or was it just more about
Yes,
you
I
getting
did.
your story out?
No, I needed to do it for myself, but I also wanted our longtime fan base to understand
Mm.
what was behind some of the things we did and the reasoning and what it felt like to be part of those decisions we made and the successes. And especially towards the end there, I felt that it would our fans just want us to keep going forever, and I bless them for that,
There's a beauty
and
in
I
that, yeah.
appreciate them. So I think, in one sense, I did owe it to them to, as much as I could, explain without betraying uh, anyone's, without being indiscreet. I wanted to delicately set the scene so they would understand.
Yeah. And
That none of these decisions came lightly, even ones that may have pissed them off over the years.
you spoke in the book as well about how there was always, maybe you were a bit of a perfectionist, still are, working on albums, and then maybe if there was something that you didn't like on the last album, you think, oh, I'll focus more on that element the next time, the singing or the bass playing, or locking in with the drums. Um, I think you've talked about the work you've done on your emotional self in the last few years. Do you still have like clear goals in music, things that you'd like to try, things that you'd like to achieve that maybe you didn't do in Rush? I mean, I was watching
I,
some footage of SARS stock the other day, and I mean, playing to 500,000 people, it's
yeah.
just unbelievable. So, do you still have like goals like that?
Well, for the longest time, I didn't,
Mm.
and that's what kept me out of the writing room. You know, I felt disconnected to my instrument and disconnected to my musical statement, and I think that's coming back. Uh, recently I found these two demos that I call the lost demos.
Mm.
I had written them with my writing partner at the time, Ben Mink, who was my collaborator on my solo album, My Favorite Headache. And he sent me these two mixes that I had totally forgotten existed.
Mm.
And when I heard them, it reminded me of what I love to do. It kind of shook me a little bit. And I didn't know what to do with them. I thought, well, I should share these, but they're really kind of basic demos. But they stood up for some reason. So I called my friend David Bottrell, who'd done some production work with Rush, and
Mm.
someone I really respect, and he lives in Toronto, and I asked him to have a listen to them, and he came over one day, and he was very moved by the songs, one of which is very personal and was written just after Neil's daughter had passed away in the car accident back in 1997, and which is the reason I didn't release it, because it was, I thought, too raw. But now, after all that has gone down, it seemed quite appropriate. So he took the songs away, and he cleaned up the sounds as best he could, and repaired any of the noises, and we recovered all the digital data, and he presented me with these final mixes that just blew me away, and I thought, wow, this is lovely. It really is.
Amazing.
It's lovely. So I wanted to share them, so I'm releasing those when they'll come out when the book comes out next week.
Wow.
And they'll also be on the audiobook. At the end of the audiobook, those two songs will be there. So I say that process was very helpful to me, to give me an idea of what I could do next musically, whether it's with Alex or on my own. Both things are very, very possible.
I think we touched base for that last week with regards to you doing new music again, but I want to talk a little bit, if I've got time, about your speaking tour as well. How much of that is maybe a step in that process of just getting back in a venue in front of people, on a more, because I know your Canadian North American run starts next week. I know the UK one is next month, isn't it? So, I mean, how will that be? I mean, I'm guessing you've not done anything like that before.
No,
Just fly by the seat of your pants.
In the book, I quote my friend Mendelssohn Joe, who sadly passed away this year, and he was an artist and a songwriter, and one of his mantras was "make new mistakes," and I just love that expression. And I think, to me, they're in a way, words to live by. Some people don't really get what I mean by that, but what he meant by that. But it means if you don't go, you won't know. So I'm trying this because I've done the same thing. I did the same thing with the same guys for 40 years.
Mm.
It's time to try different things. So one of those different things is writing. And so I feel good about my learning curve in that regard. The other thing is like going out on a tour like this and being in the same room with fans and talking to them, answering their questions and reading bits from my book and having a conversation about life and about all the things that are about a life lived in a rock band, you know? So I'm looking forward to the experience. It's unusual for me, and I don't know if it'll just be a one-off for me. But it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. And the other thing that I wanted to do was to do this TV series, which I've done about bass players, you know, trying to show the world. It's kind of an extension of my big, beautiful book of bass, you know, trying to show the world that bass players aren't just those creepy guys that are hanging around the drum kit behind the bass neck, you know. There's some interesting dudes. So I've kind of set out to prove that. And that was a really new experience for me, of course, being in your shoes, being on the other side as a presenter or an interviewer. And that required learning a new set of skills. This old dog is not tired of learning new tricks. And so...
No, it's like this inspiring, like I was saying before about, you know, you go into therapy and stuff. Like it's, I think just that thirst to keep advancing. You know, doesn't matter, you know, how many years are on the clock or anything like that. I think it's something we could all learn, especially, you know, you said, you know, make new mistakes. Of course, not all of them will be mistakes, will they? Which is a great thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. But if you're afraid to make a mistake, then you're not moving forwards. You know, like I think you just have to challenge yourself at every turn, and see what happens, and don't be afraid to embarrass yourself in public.
You know, how strange will it be revisiting some of these venues without Alex and Neil, especially like in the UK? So I think in the book you talk about playing Sheffield City Hall, which is one of the dates on the tour. I mean, I actually graduated there 10 years ago, so it'd be weird for me to go back to that room where I picked up my award from Geddy Lee to sat on stage fucking on a conversation.
Yeah, no, that's going to be an odd thing. It's going to be an odd tour for me. And like I said to someone the other day, look, that it's just a tour. It's not a career. It's an experiment.
Yeah.
It's one I hope that will be very satisfying for fans as well as for me. You know, living in a post-COVID environment, I can't just go out and do the same kind of book signing tour that I did for the Book of Bass. I'm not comfortable to do that, to meet 500 people in an enclosed space and get a chance to be face-to-face. But I really, really loved meeting my fans face-to-face.
Yeah.
So when it came to plan this one, I tried to think, how can we, in a larger venue, how can we get some FaceTime? And so that's why the second half of the show is going to be a lot of questions from the fans. And if fans submit their questions, I will answer them directly. So even though there'll be a distance between us. So, and I have a couple other things I'd like to try during the show to see if it makes them happy. And of course, you know, I've put a few other things together for them when they walk in the building. But it's really all about that, trying to maintain a connection in a more dangerous world.
Yeah. You know, I could quite happily talk all day, but the other thing I wanted to ask about was, like, you know, the sort of anniversaries and things of Rush. I think you get to a certain point where you're always celebrating an anniversary for something. I know you've done some great box sets, reissues. Is that something you're going to follow right through to Clockwork Angels, or will there be a cut-off point?
I guess, you know, I don't really have a lot to do with those, to be honest. of course, they run the ideas by us, and we make our suggestions, and they want us to approve them and everything. But these are largely devised by record companies, and, it's not my thing personally, but it is what it is. I just want to make sure they're done well and fans get their money's worth out of it. And so most of the time, that's what happens. So, and they do take great consideration. They want us to be supportive, obviously.
Yeah.
So,
I'm going to say, I mean, as am I. My dad is a huge Rush fan. I mean, I think he went to a record shop recently, and he spent £200 on a first pressing of Counterparts.
Oh my God!
So he's he's a huge Rush fan. But I mean, I think he would love a Counterparts reissue. So if that's one that you come around to doing.
Sure, it's coming.
Yeah, well, I look forward to. I'm going to try and make it to one of the dates next month, but I've got to say,
it'd be great to say hi in person.
Yeah, honestly, I get it. It's been not as I don't say this lightly, but it's one of one of the honours of my short career doing this, to speak to you twice in 1 week, which is fucking crazy. So thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Really nice talking to you, Chris. Say hi to your dad for me.
Cheers, Geddy. Thanks a lot.
Recording stopped.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you both.